Good morning, everyone. It's a little after 10, and we'll go ahead and get started today. This meeting is being recorded, and we do have the notice on the screen, so just wanted to let you know that this will be recorded and posted to our website in the next few days. Our conversation today is going to be about our 2025 draft QAP, and we're going to get started in that, but a few housekeeping items. So please do not send in any chats. All comments need to be submitted through the tax credit questions mailbox. So that's taxcreditquestions@sehousing.com. And we ask that all comments about the draft be submitted by July 29th so that we could work on getting those comments together and get another draft updated and published. In the room with me today, I have some SE Housing staff. I have Chris McMillan and Zach Tronco and Amy Herman here to help me with the Zoom today. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in because we've got a lot to cover today. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. It starts off with the fee schedule for the application. So we're going to, as we go through the QAP and the draft, we're going to do it in sections. We're going to do the QAP first, and then we're going to do Appendix C1, which is for the 9% credits. We'll do Appendix C2, which is tax-exempt bonds, C3, which is state tax credits, Appendix E, which is the tax credit manual, and then Appendix B, which is our design criteria. And we'll stop and take questions as we go through each section. So if you have a question or you want to make a comment about anything that we go over today, feel free to raise your hand. We'll unmute you, let you know when to make your comment. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So on the fee schedule, we did reduce the extension fee from $1,000 to $2,000. And I do see that I forgot to do that for the bond program, so I'll make that change and we'll get that corrected. But we're reducing that from $2,000 to $1,000. So we're going to tab over to page 4 of the QAP. So here's where we added in the appeal and reconsideration process. We received comments at the roundtable and a few written comments about adding an appeal process. So we have done that. What we have done is we've taken the exact language we had in our 9% program and copied it into the QAP. And so this will cover the 9% program, the tax-exempt bond program, and the state tax credits. And that actually takes up 2 pages. So then we're going to tab over to page 6. And at the very bottom, excuse me, went one too far. At the bottom under the physical needs assessment for rehabilitation, we added that the physical needs assessment will be required 6 months after receiving an award instead of at an application. Next, on page 7, so we added the engineered energy consumption model under the utility allowance schedule. And then we are now requiring a notarized letter about waiving the QC process for all applications. It used to be a point item in the 9% program. Well, we've made that a mandatory requirement now. Sorry, I'm super sensitive here with my mouse. Sorry about that. So on page 8, the geotechnical SOL report, we moved this. We put out a bulletin this year for the 2024 and made the exception for the bond program. We're going to move this. We moved this to our Appendix E, the tax credit manual. So it'll be moved to 10 months after an award was received. And we will also update the checklist to make sure this is reflected there. At the bottom of page 9, under the management experience, so we moved, before we had moved the management plan to 12 months after an award. We're going to move that management plan to the placed in service application. Now, we still require that you put who your management firm will be on the application, and we still require the Exhibit Y along with a copy of the certification for the LIHTC compliance specialist. But we're going to move the actual plan to placed in service. If your property manager changes between application and placed in service, there may be an issue. We'll need to review that property manager, make sure they're in good standing with SC Housing before we'll allow them to go forward. The next page, we just had a language change here to clarify. It was the word failure to was missing, and we added that in under required capacity. And we're going to scroll a couple pages to page 12. So this is under mandatory site requirements, start to on the previous page, but under number 3, we're going to allow waiver requests 30 days prior to the preliminary application deadline. So we added the preliminary application deadline instead of the full application deadline, and we will allow those waivers and answer those waivers 30 days prior to the preliminary application deadline. And then the next two changes on that page, those were just waivers that we grant. We get a lot of questions about the railroad and what we will need in order for a waiver for a railroad. So we added the information about acceptable noise level defined by HUD. And at the bottom, we did grant a waiver about a distribution facility, a manufacturing facility, and this is the consideration we gave for making that waiver. We're going to scroll over to the next page, at the very bottom under family development. So we're trying to clarify the language here. So the a total number of 3 and 4 bedroom units must be between 20 and 35% of the total property count. Again, this is a change. We had it at an exact number. We heard the comments that you guys made, and we changed that to a range. So this will apply again to our 9%, our bonds, and the state tax credits. Okay, we have a question, so we're gonna unmute Nathan. And Nathan, if you want to go ahead with your question. Okay. All right, Randy, how about Randy? Can you, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. On the 3 and 4 bedroom units, I'm just want to make sure we're understanding it correctly. Does that say that the number of units with 3 or 4 bedrooms, does that mean combined must be 20 to 35%, or 3 bedrooms must be between 20 and 35%, and 4 bedrooms must be between 20 and 35%?
That is combined. The
Okay.
Total number combined together.
Gotcha. And is there anything that forces you to, split that down the middle, or can you have all 4 bedrooms be 35% of the project? Or
we don't have anything that restricts that. It's just a combination of 3 and 4 bedrooms.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not sure if Nathan, if you had a question, and if you still do, we can come back. It looks like Sarah Neiman may have a question. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, hi. Is that a minimum or a maximum for 3 and 4 bedrooms?
It's both. So you have to have between 20 for a family development. You have to have between 20 and 35%. You have to have no less than 20% and no more than 35%.
Okay, so no more than 35%. So for example, if it's 100 units, no more than 35 units can be 3 or 4 bedrooms. So then the balance has to be 1s and 2s?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna go over a couple pages to page number 15. And on this page, we just made a change. This was a typo, and we clarified this in our QAP last year, but we removed that typo there under operating reserves. We're gonna go over 2 more pages to page 17, and then here under debt coverage ratio. So we increased that from $900 to $1,100. So the authority will waive the 1.5 maximum if the initial projected annual cash flow per unit does not exceed $1,100. We changed that there, and we also changed that in our expense coverage ratio. And then at the bottom of the next page, page 19, under minimum hard cost, we added at full application and placed in service. Okay, the next page, this is just some clarifying language here that we have. It just, we just kind of reworded it. We didn't change any actual information on that section. And that is actually all the changes that we made for the QAP portion. Does anyone have any questions regarding anything in the QAP itself before we go over to Appendix C1? I don't see any hand raised at this time, so we'll go over to C1 and we can come back to questions in the QAP at the end. All right, so on the first page, under award limitations, so we had a dollar amount for tax credits before cap per developer, and we just eliminated that and said no more than 2 applications will be awarded to a development team. And we are capping each development at 1.75 in tax credits. So no more than $1,750,000 will be given in tax credits will be given to a development. In section 2 there, number 2, we're going to limit 1 new construction application award per county. And then in number 3, we changed the way the credits would flow between the set-aside. So if there's extra credits after making awards and, you know, set-aside, if you have a few credits left over, they'll flow in this order. It'll go to general new construction, then to rehab, then to high demand new construction. And then number 4, we added number 4, an application will be ineligible for an award of 9% credits if it requests state tax credits and the authority does not have enough available state tax credits. All right, and then the next 2 pages is where we removed the appeal and reconsideration language and placed that in the QAP itself. Was the number 5 from before, so we removed the DOT set aside, and that was updating that language there. You can see we changed the percentages for high demand, rehab, and general new construction, and we added a public housing authority set aside instead of the innovation set aside. So the authority will make 1 new construction and 1 rehabilitation award to applicants involving redevelopment or replacement of public housing. Then you can see at the top of the next page where we removed the DOT set aside. And I see we've got a few hands raised right quick, so we'll go ahead and answer those. I see Holly Douglas.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going back to the order of funding. If you don't mind clarifying, can you clarify if it means, for instance, if a developer had a 92 in the high demand, for instance, but a 90 in the general pool, but a 90 in the general pool puts you further up the pecking order in that pool, does it mean that that deal is funded before the high demand that has technically a higher score but is lower down in that pool, if that makes sense?
I I'm gonna
Okay.
ask you to repeat the question one more time. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand from a process what it means in terms of making awards in the following order. So you're not
Okay,
taking all the
okay.
scores and just combining them and then going through the amount of credits available to each pool. If people submitted multiple of pools, does,
Correct. So let me try to explain this a little bit different, and I hope this is the question I hope it answers your question. So say if after the percentage is over, we have $5 million in the rehab set aside, and we only have $300,000 left in that rehab set aside. So then we'll take the little bit that we have left and we'll put it back in like general new construction to see if we can pick up another award there. And then it would go back, we take all the remaining amounts under each set aside, and we would add them together and start with general new construction and then rehab and then high demand new construction. Did that answer your question? We're not changing the order. We're not combining all the scores together.
okay, it does, I believe that makes sense, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think we have Joseph Cass with his hand raised.
Hey, good morning. Can you guys hear me? Just want to make
Yes.
sure. So going back to the percentages for Group A and Group B, just wanted to put this out there, food for thought. So if I would encourage staff at SE Housing to Google US Census, Google counties population. I found the data tables pretty quickly, and it has it by 2020, 2023, et cetera. Just some data. So the Group A counties are 13 counties: Lancaster, Dorchester, Aiken. They have about 108,000, 169, 177,000 population respectively. Okay, so in your mind, 100,000 to 175,000. Charleston, Richland, and Greenville have 420, 425, and 550,000. So just within Group A, the top 3 counties have roughly 5x the number of people as in like Lancaster County. Charleston County has 2.5 times the number of people living in it as Dorchester County, and Dorchester is also a Group A county. So even just within Group A, there is a dramatic difference in the amount of people living in these counties. And then if you actually compare, say, the top 4 counties, they have 10x the number of people as an average Group B. Group B has about 40,000 people per county, and the average Group A has 400,000. So again, just looking at it, so if you add up the numbers, the top 13 counties for Group A have 72% of the population of the state of South Carolina. So 72% of all the human beings that live in South Carolina live in these 13 counties. And only 28% of all the people who live in South Carolina live in the bottom 33 counties of population. So just in terms of the amount of credits allocated to Group A versus Group B, I mean, I get it. There are political considerations for the program, and there are state elected, folks who have opinions, and we all have to be considerate of, those political considerations. But just in terms of, if you showed somebody a state, just a generic state, and said, this is where 72% of the population live, and this is where 28% of the population live, how much of what ratio of credits should be allocated to this group versus that? Right now, Group A is only allocated 25 to 35% of the annual allocation for the entire state. And Group B is allocated 30 to 40%. So 3.7 million people live in the Group A counties, and only 1.4 million people live in the Group B counties. So I just want to encourage everyone listening to this to look up those census, statistics, dig into it for yourself, kind of compare Group A and Group B, look at those counties. And I think a logical conclusion would call for a different allocation between Group A and Group B.
Thank you for that comment.
Yep, thank you.
Jay Burns, you're welcome. Jay Bernstein?
Thanks, Kim. One quick question on back to the order of funding, just to make sure I kind of understand. So if at the end of the day, you've allocated all the credits for the percentages, and let's just say you have 2 million in credits remaining. And if you've got 2 deals in the general new construction pool that both are requesting $1 million each in federal credits, and you have, let's just say the next highest scoring deal in the rehab pool is requesting $1 million in credits. The way this reads, would you fund both of the general new construction pool deals before moving down to the rehab? Or is it just you would fund the next general new construction rehab deal, and then you would fund the next rehab deal? Does that make sense?
The way that it reads is we would fund the general what we could fund in general new construction first. So we would fund the 2 deals, is the way that it reads right now.
Okay, so it likely wouldn't spill over beyond the general new construction pool unless the next highest scoring deal was requesting $1,750,000 in credits and you only had $1 million left. You would then move down to the rehab pool?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I would also echo Joseph's sentiment on the allocation of credits to the Group A counties.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
I don't see any other hand raised, so we're going to move on. So we removed the DOT set aside. That was a one-time set aside that we had this year. Starting back on page 7, we reduced the number of units for the Group A counties to 80 and reduced the maximum number of units for Group B counties to 60. We did away with the statewide basis boost. Then starting at the bottom of page 7, we made a few changes to our proximity to amenities. And this is a little bit of a change that we talked about here internally. First of all, we did away with a few of our amenities. So we no longer have other primary amenity. We no longer have services. And I'm gonna come back to this page. We updated our healthcare to remove dentists and include local health department. We did away with public schools and senior centers. And we're going to allow you to use a maximum of 2 developments or 2 amenities per section. So for example, if you're in the high demand county and you have 2 grocery stores within a mile, 2 different grocery stores within a mile, you could get up to 24 points. So you could do 2 grocery stores, 2 shopping, 2 pharmacy, 2 retail, 2 healthcare, and 2 public facilities for a total maximum of 65 points. So you could have a grocery store that's within a mile, and you could have one within 3 miles. And then that you would get 18 points for that. So you can use up to 2 amenities per item or per section. And then we removed some. And this exact same for the high demand, for the general new construction counties, but the distances are further. Any questions about that? Randy, you have your hand raised? Go ahead.
Yeah, specifically on the lowering the unit counts. I guess I'll submit the comment to you as well in the email, but we would recommend to just go back up to the 100 and the 80 allowed. If you're already lowering the amount of credits that each deal can use, that should kind of spread the love there and stop these larger deals from soaking up the credits. And if I'm in, call it the downtown Greenville, and want to build 100 units, and the city or the county is willing to put in the money to make up the gap that the credits don't fill, then and the market can support it, then I think the development should be able to do that. So just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead, Rachel.
Can you clarify the health department? Does it or does it not qualify for that health care?
It does. The local health department does qualify.
I believe if you look down at the bottom of 8, that language might be confusing. It says does not
Oh, I'm
include
sorry.
medical.
I do apologize. It does not include, I do apologize for that. It does not include. You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Hey, there was a very small tweak to the maximum LITEX per unit. I just wanted to say that we're generally a fan of credits per unit in other states. I think it's a very reasonable and sensible way to allocate the tax credit. You know, it makes sense. The state is trying to set, you know, priorities for, you know, building units, and, you know, how many tax credits you get per unit is a very sensible way to do that. I would just say, we would recommend that, you know, if it's going to be published, if it's going to be an enforceable part of the QAP, publish it early and make it part of the QAP, and make it part of a public process. I think the syndication rate is something that is more of a technical, you know, we're publishing a floor or a ceiling for a syndication rate. I think the credit per unit is not a technical thing that is just can be published as late breaking news. I think the credit per unit is more akin to the overall tax credits per development or tax credits per county or limit. I mean, it's a very large structural piece of how an application is assembled. And if, forgive my colorful language, but if the credits per unit is published like in December, or heaven forbid, like March, it's really just a stinky diaper thrown into the middle of the tax credit program. It's, you know, you have to rework how many units. It probably affected your land value. It probably affects your architectural plans. Your soft funding is often tied to how many units you're building. So I would say with the maximum LITEX per unit, either you know, publish it early, make it something that everybody discusses, you know, have some justification to it, or don't publish it at all, and then make the QAP language reflect. Because right now it says may publish it or may not. That's a big looming thing that's out there that could drastically affect every application in the program. So I would just say, take a look at it, take a look at last year's developments. If you want to utilize that, great. That's fantastic. But just have the courage to publish early or don't publish at all.
Thank you, Joseph. Randy?
Yeah, I just wanted to second, third, double down everything Joseph said about if you are going to implement a maximum credit per unit metric, then it needs to be as early as possible so that, you know, it really does affect kind of everything about the deal. So just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Ronit?
Yeah, I just have a question about the basis boost. So is there now, I mean, is QCT still going to get a boost? Is that mentioned anywhere, or now that you've eliminated the statewide?
We just eliminated it being statewide boost, so the QCT and DDA will still get the boost.
Okay. And is
Jay
that,
Bernstein? Oh, I'm sorry, Reed, go ahead, I'm sorry.
is this just for the 9% or is this for 9% and 4%?
So the Appendix C1 is just for the 9% program. But you will get the same basis boost for QCT and the 4% as well. But we just eliminated the statewide boost we've had the last couple years. Jay, go ahead with your comment.
Thanks, Kim. On healthcare, I guess one question and one comment. Would a pediatrician count as general family practice?
Yes.
Okay. And second, if we're making this change to where you get 2 services, you get points for 2 services, I would recommend adding back in the dentist that could possibly be counted for one of those two. That's really just based on, personally, I would rather live in close proximity to both a dentist and a doctor as opposed to two doctors. But I would recommend, if we're going to go with two services, that we add the dentist back in.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hand raised, so we're gonna move on along. So we are at the bottom of page 9 under area of employment. So we increased the mileage or the distance to 2 miles radius for Group A counties and 4 miles for Group B counties, based on comments that we heard at the roundtable. And then also we added 5 points. We removed for the 5 points for the qualified opportunity zone. We removed that where you get 5 points if your development is located inside one of the rural areas as defined by USDA. This is the same requirement that we have for the state tax credits, the same USDA requirement for them. All right. On page 10, so we used to give 5 points for the notarized letter for waiving the QC process. And we've made that mandatory, so we remove the 5 points from that. On page 11, we added the efficiency and renewable credits as another type of credit. And then in leveraging, we added an extra point in there. So if you are above $10,000 per unit and above, you would get up to 6 points. If you have at least 10,000 and a greater leveraging per unit. And then to go down to the top, back to the top of this, the funds must come from an independent third party not affiliated with the any member of the development team. And then we also clarified the language regarding the terms of the loans, the soft funding. And then we added project-based rent assistance, 5 points for that. So an applicant will earn 5 points for submitting an executed letter regarding the conversion of tenant-based vouchers to project-based subsidy for at least 20% of the project units. If the owner is unable to secure final approval for the conversion as described in the application within 6 months of the reservation certificate date, the authority will not award points for letters from the same voucher administrator in the following 2 9% application cycles. So we removed the CCRP points and added project-based rent assistance points. We're going to go to the bottom of page 13. And here we start with our development cost points. So the authority will determine which new construction applicant shows development budgets amount outside the standard deviation, and then require applicants to provide an explanation. The inability to provide an explanation will justify a reduction of 2 points for a standard deviation of 2, of greater than 2, but less than or equal to 3, and a negative 4 points for a standard deviation greater than 3. The authority will use discretion in determining the groups in comparison, the type of unit, garden style, single family, townhouse developments, and then also the location in each set aside. And then the tiebreaker, we moved the CCRP to the tiebreaker. So we changed item, or tiebreaker number 3 to the CCRP, and the development is located in an area that is a concerted community revitalization plan. The plan must include the application submission. The plan must meet the criteria below. As of the preliminary application deadline, a local government formally adopt a plan to revitalize the defined geographic area containing the proposed site. The local government certifies that no principal initiated the CRP being adopted. Completing the development proposed in the application would contribute to one or more of the CRP's stated goals, and the local government has made or is committed to making specific investments in non-housing infrastructure amenities or services beyond the development. And then in our rehab scoring, we added a point if you had submitted a rehab and it got to the tiebreaker in a previous year, you'll get a point for that. And then we also changed from using the lottery to going back to using the tiebreaker criteria in section 4. Any questions on that? Randy, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, on the sustainability, the green building points, I haven't submitted a FOIA and done the research, but I would imagine that probably 95% of the applications submitted always get those 5 points. Have you guys ever considered just making that a threshold item, at least for new construction? And then that's, one less thing developers have to worry about from a scoring perspective, and one less thing you have to check from a scoring perspective.
That is something we can look at. Thank you.
And then, sorry, one more question. The development cost negative points. I understand the intent behind it. It just generally we are kind of against the idea of submitting an application where we could have points deducted off of something that we can't really control. So if there's any way that you guys could put out, I don't know what I'm asking for here, some type of to target cost per unit, so something along those lines. Otherwise, it's really difficult to be competitive in that area without knowing what the target is, I guess, is the better way to put it.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Anybody else have any comments they want to make? Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, just briefly on the USDA points. I think that I like the USDA rural versus non-rural map. I'm a big fan of that map. I just think if you're incentivizing folks out in rural areas, I would say if the intent is to use RHS financing, certain loan products, encourage the rural housing service project-based vouchers, then maybe make the points mention some, 2 points for being in a rural area, but, 3 points for having evidence of, some sort of rural housing service participation, whether that's an LOI from, somebody with that loan product in mind or that has rural vouchers. Otherwise, I think if it's just go chase a site in a rural area, here's 5 points, then I think what it will end up doing is drawing away from the metro areas. And the metro areas, that's where the jobs are, that's where people are, that's where the people in South Carolina, for better or for worse, have chosen to live. And so you want to build the housing where the people are and not have developers go chase 5 points out in a rural area just for the sake of, because it's not just rural counties versus urban counties. I mean, it's the rural parts of Horry County, the rural parts of Charleston County, the rural parts of, Greenville, et cetera, versus the more metro areas where people live and suburban areas. So just to maybe look at those points and see if there's a way to make them a little more fine-grained or more targeted to the intent.
I think you may have muted yourself at the very end, but thank you for your comment. Any other comments before we move over to Appendix C2? All right, I don't see any more. So we really didn't make any changes to Appendix C2. We did, again, move the missing documents and put that in the QAP itself. So we now have that appeal process, missing documents, and reconsideration in the QAP itself for the bonds. And then on the next page, we also put the family targeting. It's the same as the 9%. We put that in the QAP. It's the 20 to 35% of the total units must be 3 or 4 bedroom. Right underneath that, under size requirements, we are restricting the new constructions to be 200 units or less. And the very bottom of this page, so you can submit, we heard the request for preliminary applications, and we're looking into that request and seeing how we can accommodate that for the bond program, but we will allow a development team to submit up to 3 preliminary applications. We're going to award 1 development per development team, or up to 1 award per development team, and then 1 award per county. And that is all the changes that we made to Appendix C2. Any comments or questions about that? I don't see anyone with their hand raised. Oh, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry. Didn't see your hand raised.
Yeah, Kim, one thing, I noticed we didn't change any of the scoring criteria in the bond program. I strongly suggest we explore some of those scoring suggestions that were made at the roundtable, because this scoring criteria for the bond program is really problematic.
Thank you for your comment. I do appreciate that. Any other comments about that? So we did not make any changes to Appendix C3. So I'm just going to tab through that. That's regarding the state tax credit. I'm going to move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get you before you moved on from the bonds.
Oh, that's okay.
One of the things I've noticed is it says that bonds are not eligible to apply for home funds. And we would strongly recommend removing that. Specifically, a lot of, big counties and cities have all of their federal money tied up in home funds. And so, bond deals are already kind of up against it from a making the deal pencil standpoint. And if we're removing one of the biggest pieces of funding that we have available to make the deal work, it really handicaps making any bond deals work. So we would like to be able to make bond deals eligible for home funds.
We'll make a clarification to that, but that means our home funds here at the Housing Authority.
Got it.
But we'll make that sure that's clear in the appendix. Gary Long, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, and I apologize if I'm repetitive, but C2 is particularly just applicable to bond deals. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we're on Appendix E. We're going to tab over to page 3. And here's where we added that geotechnical soil report requirement. So it's due 10 months after award. We removed that from a requirement at application to after an award. And then we're going to tab over a couple more pages to page 6. And so we just wanted to clarify some compliance monitoring fees. So they're subject to change each year. The current QAP will reflect the amount owed per unit for any given year. And then the compliance monitoring fees are due throughout the extended use period to include the decontrol period. And those were the 2 changes that we made to Appendix E. Did anyone have any questions about those 2 changes? All right, well, we have 2 other changes in our Appendix B, and I'm going to tab over to those. We made 2 small changes. So on page 7 of Appendix B, which is our mandatory design criteria, we increased the square footage amount for 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. And we also added language about the square footage amount for the townhouses for 2 and 3 bedroom townhouses. And then we're going to tab over to the very last page. And this is for the rehabs, the requirements for rehab. So the tests that we require in this section B, they are due 10 months after the award when you submit your plans. And then for the mold report, we're clarifying that at least 10% of the total number of units must be tested, and the testing must be in at least one unit centrally located in each building. So that was clarification that we wanted to add that we had put in a previous year's QAP. Any questions about those changes? Allison Stein?
Yep, thank you. Just so I'm totally sure, when we apply under the 2025 QAP, you won't be looking for any of these reports at that time at application.
No, not at application, but after award. Yes, we will pull those after award.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions? Anything that we talked about today regarding the QAP or any? Go ahead, Gary.
Yes, and just to be clear, this 2025 QAP would not apply to any bond deal submissions later this year. Only from January 1st on, right? So anything submitted this fall would be under the existing QAP.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Edward?
Hi. Could we go back to on the bond or on bond requirements, 4%? So do I understand with the new requirement that for including Greenville, Richland, Charleston counties, that SE Housing is only permitting one bond deal per county per year?
That is what we have recommended, yes, is one award per county.
Okay, is this the place to ask for the background on that as to where that's coming from? Because I think that a lot of that ties into, the previous comment that the gentleman made about, I know this is 9%, but the same school of thought between more suburban and your rural counties. This just seems awfully lopsided.
It's just due to the limited amount of bond ceiling that we have available, trying to spread that out amongst the counties, all counties, a good many counties.
Okay.
Jay Bernstein.
Thanks, Kim. I have a couple of just quick underwriting questions. One is regarding appraisals for RD properties. The way that the QAP currently reads is that for RD funded developments, the appraisal must add together the values for as is restricted rents and the interest credit subsidy. So two things. One, RD doesn't necessarily look at it that way. And then there's also, if your community is prepay eligible on your RD loan, then the actual purchase price and value of the property is higher. And so I think just, we would just be looking to kind of line up SC Housing's determination of acquisition credits with RD's definition of acquisition. So that there's not a disconnect there when we go and, it can cause some problems. So I would suggest that we kind of look into that a little bit and get those two definitions to line up.
Okay, thank you for the comment. We'll look at that and get some more information and see if we can make changes to that. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Allison?
Sorry to go back to those updated reports that won't be applicable for the 2025 QAP. if we submitted an application in December of last year and then we're going to submit a bond app in October again, do you, I just want to be totally sure that SC Housing is expecting us to update all those reports to qualify in this upcoming round? Is that accurate?
So let me make sure I heard your question. You had an application that came in at the end of 2023 and you're looking, you're going to submit again in 2024
That's
for
right.
the tax exempt bond, and you're looking for the rehab reports to be updated.
Yeah, if it's necessary for those reports to be updated.
Let me look into that, and I'll get back with you on that. Okay? I'll
Okay.
post a bulletin about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Joseph.
I had a comment going back to the points for the project-based vouchers. I definitely think that that's a worthy goal. We have our personal experience has been that working with the housing authorities before we have an award in hand, especially for a 9% award, it gets tricky, you know, for them to follow their own procurement rules. They have to have some sort of, RFP or publication. So then they're kind of weighing which of the like 4 applications in the county, you know, they want to support. And then if they're giving away points, then basically those public housing authorities are in the driver's seat. And then they have to do it according to a certain clock and process to have it all ready for the 9% program. I would just encourage staff, SC Housing, to kind of reach out to multiple housing authorities and kind of get a little bit better window into what their process is for having those project-based vouchers in place, and sort of what qualifies as a legitimate, letter. I mean, is it just sort of a soft letter that says, yeah, maybe sort of we'll give you this, or is it what kind of level commitment? There's a lot of room for squishiness, and there's a lot of room for people not necessarily following like really good public procurement policies and those sorts of things. If the points are awarded as they are, and especially with only one award per county, then it's the one that has the project-based vouchers. It could get pretty messy. So maybe if there's some, putting a little more detail and clarity in that section to really, anticipate some of those issues.
I hope you don't mind, Kim, if
Okay.
I jump in here as this
Go
is
ahead.
Mark Shelburne, Novogradic, but I'm here in my role as consultant to SC Housing, and so I was part of this drafting that section, and the drafting of it was informed by experience in other states of exactly what you're talking about, Joseph, where developer says, yes, I'm going to have project-based rent assistance when they apply, but then ultimately they don't. And that's the reason for the second part of that provision, where if that occurs, that housing authority or Section 8 administrator, whichever it may be, then does not have the ability to let someone generate points in the subsequent years. So it's meant to be self-enforcing, because otherwise the other approach, there's a way to do that, is to get at what you're talking about, where the authority gets very involved in trying to understand the current status, recent history of that authority's procurement process. And so, and that is an option. That's a way to go. And like you say, it would involve a lot more detailed, specific descriptions of what has to be said when and exactly what. And so that is another option that we could do. But again, the point is that an authority would know if they do it, play fast and loose and are cavalier and make an award and say someone's going to get the project basing, and then they don't, then SC Housing is not going to take their word for it for the next couple of cycles. And so maybe that's not enough of a consequence. I don't know. That's the point of this being a draft, is to get that kind of input.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Randy?
Yeah, sorry for talking so much. The community revive plans, I know at the roundtable, there was a lot of back and forth about, how are they scored and what is the understanding of them and everything, but we would be against removing them totally as a point item. That often the community revive plan is kind of a city's only way of getting a deal where they think it is best fit in their city. And if you take that away, it's really difficult for us to find something that fits in a box and also meets the city's needs without having this kind of pressure release valve of the community revive plan to make them feel like they're a part of the process.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Any other comments or questions? Don't see any hands raised. So again, we would like for you to submit comments about the draft that we went over today and any questions that you may have by July 29th. Please submit those to the tax credit questions at schousing.com mailbox, and we'll get those and go through those. Then we'll get working on an update of this draft based on those comments. I appreciate your time today, and I'm gonna just do one last call for any comments or questions. Okay, David?
Yes, hi. Is there any update on the timing of the application deadline?
For the
For
tax exempt-
4% tax exempt bonds.
we posted a timeline on the multifamily page, and forgive me, I don't have it in front of me, but it's at the end of October. I think it's October 25th is the deadline for those applications.
All right. Yeah, I might have to take it to my boss. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
I didn't hear any other comments? Or did that answer your question, David?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, you're welcome. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, I just want to thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate every comment and question that was raised. We'll go back and get working on our draft once we have those comments submitted by July 29th. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining us.